He was not happy. And beware, folks. AB might be talking to Becky throughout the game day. They're best friends. Run it out, Wilson.
What happens when absolute power meets the quiet arrival of someone who refuses to be ignored for years? A Wilson-ruled women's basketball. MVPs, championships, unquestioned authority.
WNBA champion, A'ja Wilson.
But what do you do when one phone call tells you the future is moving on without you? Behind closed doors, a decision was made, a legacy reconsidered, and the spotlight she believed she owned shifted to the one player she spent years trying to diminish. Caitlin Clark. Was it arrogance that blinded her, or fear of what she saw coming?
Caitlin Clark has captured the basketball world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
This isn't a story about stats or highlights. It's about ego, rivalry, and how a carefully nurtured vendetta can become the very force that ends a dynasty. Because in the end, the most dangerous opponent isn't the one you challenge publicly. It's the one who replaces you while you're still looking in the mirror. The setup, 2 years of tension. To understand how we arrived at this stunning moment, we need to travel back to 2022 when A'ja Wilson was sitting comfortably at the absolute summit of women's basketball. Picture this. She had the MVP trophies displayed proudly in her home.
First time, Wilson is watching the moment she found out she won that third MVP trophy.
She had the championship rings that sparkled under every camera flash. She had the lucrative endorsement deals with major brands fighting for her attention. She had the magazine covers and the media profiles and the analysts on television calling her the greatest player of her generation without any hesitation.
A'ja, she's been A1 since day
top tier.
But she was on a whole different level while making WNBA history.
When Wilson looked in the mirror each morning, she saw someone who had clawed her way to the top through talent and determination. Someone who had earned the undisputed right to be the center of attention in her sport. She had absolutely no intention of sharing that spotlight with anyone, and certainly not with some college player from Iowa who had not yet proven anything at the professional level. Then Caitlin Clark happened, and everything Wilson believed about her place in the basketball universe began to shift beneath her feet. Clark did not simply enter the national conversation about women's basketball the way most prospects do. She did not quietly work her way up through the ranks and wait her turn for recognition. No, she exploded into the public consciousness like a meteor crashing through the atmosphere, leaving a trail of broken records and stunned defenders in her wake.
Even before Sunday, Clark was on a record-breaking run.
Suddenly, every single arena she played in was selling out weeks in advance. Every game she appeared in was shattering television ratings that the WNBA had been chasing for decades. Every highlight reel across every sports network was dominated by her impossible 30-foot three-pointers.
Look at Clark. Yes!
Clark hits the three. Too much space. Nearly 10 million.
Launched with supreme confidence and her fearless competitive fire that reminded older fans of legends they thought they would never see again. The media could not get enough of her story. The casual fans who had never watched women's basketball before were now setting their DVRs specifically for her games. And A'ja Wilson, the woman who believed she was the rightful queen of this kingdom, could not handle watching someone else receive the adoration she thought belonged exclusively to her. Instead of celebrating what Clark was doing for the entire sport, instead of recognizing that a rising tide lifts all boats and that Clark's popularity was bringing millions of new eyes to women's basketball that would eventually benefit everyone, Wilson made a fateful decision that would eventually come back to haunt her in ways she never imagined. She decided that Caitlin Clark was not a colleague or a fellow ambassador for the game. She decided Clark was her enemy. The campaign started subtly at first. So subtly that most people dismissed it as coincidence or misinterpretation. A liked post here that questioned Clark's legitimacy as a future professional. A cryptic tweet there that seemed carefully designed to undermine her achievements without directly naming her. Wilson began sharing content that highlighted veteran accomplishments with timing that was clearly calculated to overshadow Clark's record-breaking moments. Whenever Clark did something spectacular, Wilson's social media would suddenly feature throwbacks to her own achievements or pointed commentary about what it really takes to succeed at the highest level. When Clark won Time Magazine's prestigious Athlete of the Year award,
Caitlin Clark is Time Magazine's 2024 Athlete of the Year.
An honor that should have been celebrated as a victory for women's sports everywhere. Wilson's online presence did not celebrate this win for the game she claimed to love. Instead, it radiated unmistakable skepticism and barely concealed resentment. The message was crystal clear to anyone who was paying attention. Wilson viewed Clark not as a rising star who could help elevate the entire league, but as an existential threat to everything she believed she had built over years of hard work and sacrifice. Here's the thing about jealousy that Wilson apparently never learned. It never stays hidden no matter how carefully you try to disguise it. Jealousy leaks out in interviews where Wilson would use loaded phrases like real impact and sustained excellence in ways that were obviously designed to diminish Clark's contributions to the sport. It showed in the passive-aggressive comments that grew more pointed and less subtle as Clark's popularity continued to soar beyond anything Wilson had ever achieved. It revealed itself in the way Wilson would change the subject whenever reporters brought up Clark's accomplishments or asked her opinion on the phenomenon sweeping through basketball. Wilson made the absolutely fatal mistake of turning every single Caitlin Clark achievement into a personal attack on her own legacy. She made Clark's success about herself rather than about the unprecedented growth of the sport they both claimed to love. She convinced herself that she was defending the honor of veterans everywhere when she was really just protecting her own ego from the uncomfortable reality that someone younger and more marketable had arrived. What Wilson did not realize, what she could not have possibly known at the time, was that Team USA officials were watching every single one of these interactions with cold, professional eyes, and they were taking very detailed notes. The secret flaw nobody talks about. Now, here is where we get into territory that the mainstream basketball media almost never discusses. Everyone talks about Wilson's dominance. Everyone talks about her awards and her statistics and her ability to control a game.
A two-time Olympic gold medalist and two-time WNBA champion, A'ja Wilson.
But there is a fundamental problem with A'ja Wilson's game that becomes devastatingly obvious when you understand how international basketball actually works. And that problem is something insiders call the special whistle. Look at Wilson's free throw attempts in the WNBA. She averages nearly 12 per game. On the surface, that sounds like the mark of an unstoppable force. A player so dominant that nobody can stop her without fouling. But when you actually break down the film, what you see tells a different story. You see a player who has mastered the art of selling contact to referees. Every drive to the basket ends with an exaggerated motion. Every defensive contest, no matter how clean, results in a theatrical appeal for a foul. Wilson's scoring output in the WNBA is not built purely on skill. It is built significantly on a steady stream of favorable officiating that has protected offensive players like her for years. In the WNBA, this works beautifully. The rules favor offensive players. The referees know the stars. The system rewards the style of play. But international basketball operates on an entirely different planet. FIA referees do not care about your MVP trophies. They do not care about your endorsement deals or how many followers you have on Instagram. They officiate a game where physical play is not just permitted, but expected. The kind of contact that sends Wilson to the free throw line a dozen times in a typical WNBA game results in nothing more than a simple play on call in international competition. Team USA scouts watched Wilson in international exhibition games, and what they saw terrified them. Her scoring efficiency did not just drop, it fell off a cliff. When referees allowed real physical defense, when they stopped rewarding her foul-baiting techniques, Wilson looked like a completely different player. Her entire offensive rhythm depends on constant interruptions and favorable whistles that simply never materialize on the global stage. She is a player built for one very specific environment.
You were the league's MVP last year, and despite falling short in the finals, you wrote a column for the Players Tribune entitled,
"And that environment does not exist in the Olympics or the World Cup." Now, compare that to Caitlin Clark. When Clark scores, she does it in ways that no referee on earth can take away from her. She pulls up from 30 feet and drains shots that leave defenders staring at the scoreboard.
What's that, about 26 feet? When she's going to her left and
in disbelief. When defenders make contact with her, she does not flail or fall or look for a whistle. She finishes through it. Her step-back three-pointers and her deep-range shots are the definition of self-reliant offense. She beats defenders with shot selection, basketball IQ, and footwork, not by initiating marginal contact and hoping someone blows a whistle. Her game translates to any court in the world because it is built on fundamental skill rather than system exploitation. The difference becomes obvious when you watch them side by side. Wilson initiates contact, then freezes, waiting for the whistle and the subsequent free throws. Clark anticipates contact, adjusts midair, and scores anyway. Wilson's method is perfect for the controlled environment of the WNBA. Clark's method is perfect everywhere because it relies on nothing except pure basketball ability. The decision that changed everything. Team USA released their preliminary selection pool for the 2026 World Cup.
This World Cup is different in terms of the number of teams that will participate.
In the 2028 Olympics. And when Wilson saw the list, her name was not on it. According to sources close to their organization, her reaction was explosive. The woman who had spent 2 years convinced she was untouchable discovered in one moment that she had been replaced by the exact person she had worked so hard to undermine. The meltdown reportedly lasted for days. Wilson immediately started making phone calls. Frantic, desperate calls to anyone within USA Basketball who might give her an explanation. Her representatives were scrambling to schedule emergency meetings with coaching staff who had already moved on to evaluating the players who actually made the cut. Meanwhile, Clark was receiving congratulations from teammates, coaches, and fans celebrating her opportunity to represent her country. The contrast in their reactions tells you everything you need to know about who these two players really are. Clark posted a simple thank you message. No cheap shots, no demands for more attention. Just genuine gratitude and excitement to learn from the veterans on the team. Wilson's camp, on the other hand, immediately started floating stories about supposed scheduling conflicts that had prevented her from participating. Nobody believed it. Everyone saw it for exactly what it was, a desperate attempt to save face after being publicly and definitively cut from the program she thought she owned. But here's the part that really matters. Team USA coaches had been watching Wilson's behavior for 2 full years before making this decision. Every passive-aggressive comment got noted. Every cryptic social media post got filed away. Every interview where she took shots at Clark got added to a growing file of evidence that this was not a player who would put team success above her own ego. They were building a team to represent the United States on the world stage. And they needed players who would lift each other up, not tear each other down. Why character matters more than stats. International competition operates on an entirely different wavelength than anything these players experience in their domestic leagues. It is not just about raw talent or impressive statistics or how many times your name appears in the record books. It is about handling crushing pressure when your entire nation is watching and expecting gold. It is about maintaining absolute composure when hostile crowds are screaming in languages you do not understand, and referees are making calls that seem designed to work against you. It is about representing your country with dignity and grace when cameras from around the world are capturing your every expression, your every reaction, your every moment of triumph or frustration. The Olympic stage magnifies everything. It exposes weaknesses that domestic competition can hide. And most importantly, it reveals the true character of every athlete who steps onto that court wearing their nation's colors. Think about this carefully. A player who cannot handle fan criticism on social media, who melts down when strangers on the internet question her accomplishments, certainly cannot handle the immense psychological weight of carrying American basketball on the global stage. A player who responds to a competitor's success with visible jealousy and barely concealed resentment instead of genuine celebration in professional unity is absolutely not someone you want in your locker room when the stakes have never been higher. Team USA coaches understand this reality intimately because they have seen what happens when teams bring players with toxic attitudes into high-pressure international environments. They have witnessed championship hopes crumble not because of a lack of talent, but because of a surplus of ego and a deficit of emotional intelligence. They know that one player with a bad attitude can poison an entire team's chemistry faster than any opponent could ever dream of doing. Wilson's reaction to being cut from the roster actually served as the ultimate vindication that the coaches had made not just the right decision, but the only decision they could have made. Her immediate response was not graceful acceptance or quiet determination to prove the selectors wrong. Instead, it was an emotional meltdown that reportedly lasted for days. Her inability to accept the natural consequences of her own behavior. Her desperate pivot to making excuses and demanding explanations from anyone who would listen demonstrated exactly the kind of emotional fragility that would become a catastrophic liability in Olympic competition. Imagine that same reaction happening after a tough loss in a gold medal game.
And A'ja Wilson, you could see her mouthing, she's on me, possession.
Imagine those frantic phone calls and that barely contained fury being directed at teammates or officials or media members on the world stage. The coaches imagined exactly that scenario, and they wisely decided they wanted no part of it. Now, compare that volatile reaction to Caitlin Clark, who has spent 2 full years absorbing constant attacks from Wilson and her allies without ever once responding in kind. Clark has faced more public scrutiny, more unwarranted criticism, and more manufactured controversy than almost any player in women's basketball history. And she has handled absolutely all of it with the kind of quiet grace that makes major sponsors eager to sign her and national team selectors confident in her ability to represent the country. While Wilson was busy liking shady posts and making passive-aggressive comments, Clark was putting her head down and letting her game speak for itself. While Wilson was turning every interview into an opportunity to subtly diminish a younger player's accomplishments, Clark was talking about how honored she would be to learn from the veterans and contribute to the team's success in any way possible. The contrast could not be more stark or more revealing. The developing chemistry between Clark and players like Aaliyah Boston represents something beautiful that Wilson's towering ego.
Aaliyah Boston doing this to the MVP A'ja Wilson in Game 1 is insane. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham were just loving the way she was dominating A'ja.
Would never have permitted to flourish. Their connection forged through intense college rivalry and genuine mutual respect provides Team USA with a foundational strength built on admiration. Team USA desperately needs players who can seamlessly fit into a system designed for collective success rather than individual glorification. They need athletes who can elevate their teammates through unselfish play and positive energy. They need competitors who can check their personal statistics at the door and focus entirely on what is best for the group. Wilson's entire track record over the past 2 years suggests she would have demanded that everything revolve around her individual success, her individual recognition, her individual legacy. Clark's track record demonstrates the exact opposite. She will do whatever it takes to help her team win, even if that means sacrificing personal glory for collective triumph. In the end, character is not just important, it is everything. The new era of women's basketball witnessing right now is not just a roster change. It is a fundamental shift in how women's basketball values its players. The era of the special whistle player is ending. The era of pure, unguardable, fundamental skill is beginning. Team USA has sent a message that resonates far beyond this one selection. They chose character over chaos. They chose professionalism over pettiness. They chose players who build up the sport over players who tear down their competitors. Clark's appeal extends beyond American borders in ways Wilson's brand never could. International fans fell in love with her during her college career. Her deep-range shooting and her infectious competitive spirit translate across cultures and languages. She brings excitement and athleticism that grow the global audience for women's basketball, which is exactly what the Olympic platform demands. Wilson's approach focused on existing fans. Clark's approach creates new ones. The 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Olympics will.
2026 is shaping up to be a big year in the sports world with global stages, iconic venues, and can't-miss moments.
Showcase Clark's leadership on basketball's biggest stages. Team USA plans to build their system around her unique skill set and her basketball intelligence. The drama and constant need for attention that Wilson would have brought would have created distractions during both preparation and competition. Clark's focus stays locked on team success rather than individual recognition. That difference matters when you are representing your country. Power rarely collapses in public. It erudites quietly behind closed doors through moments most people never see. What looks like confidence can harden into entitlement. What feels like leadership can slowly turn into isolation. And when decisions are finally made, they don't come with explanations, only consequences. In elite spaces, reputations aren't destroyed by failure alone, but by how someone responds when the spotlight begins to shift. So, here's the question that lingers long after the headlines fade. Was this simply one roster decision or the opening move in a larger recalibration of women's basketball? One where influence is earned differently and legacy no longer guarantees protection. And if the balance of power really is changing, who's next to feel it? Because this story didn't end with one phone call. It only revealed how much more is still unfolding.